Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm super excited to have Theresa with me today from People Power AI. We've been talking for the last 10 minutes, plotting out all the amazing things we could talk about. So this is going to be good. Just to introduce you, Theresa, before I let you say hello, you are a renowned speaker, consultant, founder of People Power AI. You have over 25 years of expertise in people and culture, and you're helping small to mid-sized businesses unleash the power of AI, artificial intelligence. I'm super excited to have you because it's a new thing, a whole new world out there, and most of us are trying to figure out what in the hell we can do with AI. So thank you for being here with me.
No, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to continue the conversation we just started. Obviously, a lot of exciting things to talk about in the world of AI and elsewhere. So I'm just so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone listening, please do put your comments in the chat and we can absolutely answer them. We love to have a conversation, not just with each other, but with those of you listening in. So AI is new and I know I have lots of questions. So let's start by talking a little bit about how you got really interested in AI.
Sure. So after 25 years of working in corporate America as varying levels of leadership and finally becoming a head of HR for many years, I decided to leave and start my own business. And through that process was really struggling to write the About Me page of my website. And that's really the impetus for me even looking towards anything AI oriented. And like many, last year I found ChatGPT. I have to be honest, the very first thing that I did in ChatGPT was I asked it to write a haiku on company culture. As I thought it was like, what is this funny, funky thing? And I very quickly realized that the value of what AI, just in that generative AI toolbox, if you will, was so going to exponentially change the way we were able to work if we could embrace it and understand it. And so very shortly after that, I turned more towards deep education. I've spent thousands of hours not only exploring generative AI tools, but also tools outside of generative AI with various partners, and have attended certification through MIT for AI and business strategy, and really tried to educate myself so that I could be somebody that could educate others in HR on what AI can do.
That's really awesome. And it's needed. So I'm glad that you took the plunge and are a leader in this and will become a thought leader, no doubt, because HR, who's constantly putting out fires and finding ways to cut the time they spend doing all the things that we do. I feel like, my head initially, AJ says the site's not working. Is there trouble? I don't know. We are doing fine over here. AJ is he comes to all of our our calls.
Hi, AJ.
Refresh, AJ. Maybe refresh. So I think being in HR myself, something that we kind of jumped to is I could use ChatGPT to write policies. Admittedly, here at Civility Partners, we've used them to write core competencies and for clients, and not that we just have ChatGPT do it and then we give it to them. Obviously, what I found is it makes the process a little bit quicker because I can write the core competency in ChatGPT, and then it gives me a starting point, and then I can do what I need to do to make it what the client needs. But that's about the extent of, I think, where many of us go, especially those in HR. What are some of the other ways beyond, hey, policy writing might be a little easier? What are some of the other ways that we can use AI?
Well, it's interesting. I think one of the first things that I thought of was the challenges that I had through COVID of writing just some of the really tough conversations and communications that had to be sent out, whether it related to areas that we just have never been a part of, really keeping religious conversations generally out of the nomenclature of the conversations we have. That was something that all of a sudden we had to start communicating about. New conversations about social justice, things that we wanted to talk about, but many of us had never spoken about. And so I think for me, it was looking at what are the core communications that we need to send out. And I absolutely agree with you, Catherine. I think in many ways, just not having to start from that blank page creates such a better experience, so that we can kind of flesh out ideas that we just never would have had, perhaps, because it's almost like talking to a trusted colleague or a trusted specialist in the different areas that you could explore. So anything from recruitment, talent retention, supporting performance conversations, management. So I think that, and I love the comment that the user just shared, it's about not only using it as a jumping off point, but recognizing the importance of having the human participate in that dialogue as well. And for me, I really see any generative AI experience I have as a conversation, and that's how I approach it.
Okay, that's a good, useful tip number one, because I do not do that. I kind of go there and it's like, write a core competency around respect. And then it does that. And then I copy and paste it into Word, and then I retool it, but it does make it quicker because I'm not starting from scratch. But so tell me more about using it as a conversation, or how are you having the conversation?
Sure. I love that you shared that example, because I think when many of us are new to something, we tend to explore things the way that we're used to exploring other things. Yeah. And one of the experiences that I found most common is that the clients that I work with, or the people that attend my learning sessions, have a tendency to approach generative AI in the same way that they've approached Google or other search engines. And one of the foundational things that I think it's good to keep in mind is that this is a very different tool. So in the way that you can come up with thousands of results from a Google search, what you're really coming up with is it's searching the internet and finding topics through SEO, and it's category ranking those different things, but you still have to do so much of the heavy lifting to open those documents up, see if they're relevant, close that one down, now open another. And I think when you look at when I approach generative AI, I do approach it like a conversation. So I have a structure that I use. So key point number 2, I have a clear structure that I use whenever I'm starting a new conversation. And that's when I'm starting something a little bit more deep than, give me a quote on XYZ or come up with a haiku, which I don't really use anymore. Today, it's more, I approach it in a 6-point process, from welcoming it to the conversation. So I say hello, I greet it as though I'm walking into a room and my very trusted friend is there. I talk about the specific roles we're each playing. So I am this, and I need you to be this. And that means designing and defining what expertise they have, what area of focus we might want to hone in on. I talk about the results that I'm looking for. So what's great about generative AI is you can ask for the results you want, whether it's an image, a chart, a graph. It takes a lot of the legwork out of needing to do that. I also give it parameters relative to, I need you to ask me and make sure that you understand everything. So I ask it for confirmation that it understands everything I'm asking for. And then I challenge it to ask me questions. And in my final step, which is sort of the appreciation step, if you will, I always reinforce the fact that I wanted to have inclusive language. I wanted to eliminate any bias in its response. So you can kind of feed some of those things that you'd like to see out of a response and start to really actually hone in much closer to the result that you want without having to do so much back channel editing. Again, not to say that you don't need to edit it and make sure it's what you want it to say, but through crafting more descriptive and prescriptive requests, the output, I think you'll find, Catherine, is that it's going to be a lot more focused and a lot more true to what you want that end result to be. So when you're asking it for competencies, one great step would be, what do you want the end result of those competencies to be for your company? What do you want the behaviors to be? And then you can kind of ensure that you put that into your prompt.
Well, holy shit, Theresa. Pardon my French, everyone. Mic drop. Never even occurred to me. Holy moly. This is so awesome. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Didn't even, mind blown that I'm like struggling to regain. Okay. We have some questions. Okay. When it comes to, well, let's put Rachel's question up here. When it comes to more brick and mortar industries who self-proclaimed aren't as innovative in their HR programs, how do you start the conversation on the value for all industries, not just tech, like the perception may be? So how do we introduce AI to our leaders is kind of what I'm hearing. Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong.
Rachel, thank you. Great question. And I come from less tech-related industries myself. I worked for a marketing organization for many years of my career, and then I worked for commercial real estate, which by all intents and purposes is not the most, doesn't happen to be the most modern, forward-thinking industry. I think the core piece of HR leading any initiative within an organization has to do with what is your strategy and what are the outcomes that you believe or have seen will result from employing that context or concept. So when it comes to AI, I think a lot of people tend to think about efficiency, right? Time savings. You can knock out a job description, which some kind of boring stats, if you will, although everybody, if you're all HR people, will understand this. The general small to mid-sized business on an annual basis has to write around 20 new job descriptions. Every one of those job descriptions, takes exponential periods of time, not only in the crafting of it, but in the waiting period. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the tactical ways you can approach AI in your business, regardless of what industry it is the efficiency of time. But I think the other thing that we all know is that organizations and employees have been struggling lately. And a great conversation to start is around how do we create greater engagement with the employees we have and we want to retain. And through that, I think there are a lot of artificial intelligence tools that can help you bring forth some information in a much more fast, effective, and supportive way for HR leaders to actually bring that information to light and talk about it in a strategic way with your leadership team. So I think where the challenges sometimes exist is being afraid to bring up the topic. Mm-hmm. But the reality is those conversations are going to start happening if they haven't already. Mm-hmm. And it's thinking about the open-ended questions that you can ask your organization around AI that could lead you to being a lead in this area. And my biggest tip for this is ask AI what you should be asking. I go through a lot of different questions on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on Instagram around, I have X issue and, I'm struggling for an answer. That's a great time-saving tool so that you can actually focus in on the strategy and the connection and the community that you want to build within your organizations.
I just put this up because great point. Thank you for sharing this. And I will definitely be having my team watch this. There is a course on controlling ChatGPT. And if you didn't know this, so if you have LinkedIn Premium, you can watch the LinkedIn Learning Library. There's thousands of courses on pretty much everything under the sun. If you don't have access to LinkedIn Premium, the authors can actually release courses for free. My team does that pretty regularly. We release a few of my courses, then they're free for 24 hours. So I would just say, if you want to watch this course, maybe email the owner of the course or the author and ask them if they would release it for 24 hours, and then you could watch it. A little secret. So I think what you're saying is, Theresa, that just like anything, we have to have a business case for why this is helpful. And ChatGPT is free. So even if you just started kind of using it on your own, I think, and then you were able to say, hey, I produced this via ChatGPT, and start to get people, talking about it. And There's paid ones as well. For example, I want to say it's called Jasmine, but that's not right. Jasper something.
Jasper AI.
Yeah. So that one, from what I understand, Theresa, you can upload some of your old things to it, and then it will learn your voice and speak or write things like you. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, so there are a lot of generative AI tools. So ChatGPT is the one that's talked about, I think, most frequently. It was the first to market. Now, I mean, even we've got Google relaunching theirs this week. I think whether it's ChatGPT, Bard, Bing, Claude, Perplexity,
Okay, there's a lot.
There's a lot of them. Okay, and I think what's interesting is they all, I think, serve different masters in some way. Some are a little bit better with narrative content. Some are a little bit better with more statistical information, just in the way that their models were written. So one of the things that I would recommend is join different groups. So I have one. I noticed that Craig mentioned that PeoplePower.ai goes directly to LinkedIn, and that's on purpose right now. I have a group chat or a group on LinkedIn that is PeoplePower.ai, and it's just people that are there interested in learning about artificial intelligence and that have a focus on people, whether that's you're a people manager, people in HR. And that is a site where we share resources and insights and tools for learning more about AI. But there are other great groups, Women of AI, a ton of different ones that you can follow. And I think the key for me and that is find a group that supports what you're looking for and utilize that group to help you experience AI in new ways and explore it in ways that maybe you wouldn't have thought of. I think a lot of times when you're first getting used to using ChatGPT, or Bard or Bing or which one you choose, you have a tendency still to go to Google. I can tell you that I don't Google anything anymore. I haven't Googled anything in months, because I know that if I'm looking for something statistic, I'll go more to like a Bing chat. I like their results better. I think their annotation of results is better. If I'm looking for something that's more creative writing, I have a tendency to go either to Claude, which is through Perplexity. I really like the narrative user interface of Claude. Also has a free version.
CLAUD?
AUDE. Yep.
Okay.
And almost all of them now we've kind of surpassed that space where only one or two of them allow you to do uploads. At one point you could really only do uploads in Claude or Poe. And now you can, ChatGPT, if you have the paid version, I think even if you don't have the paid version, you can still do the uploads. You can set a custom voice, as you were talking about, Catherine. You can actually feed it with information. And I've actually created a custom GPT for HR leaders that's just called HR Advisor. And it gives people an opportunity to just query about HR questions that they have.
Okay. What's it called?
So it's called, I'll grab the link if you'll give me 2 seconds.
Yeah. While you're doing that, because I know we wanted to definitely talk today about AI and the bias and the fact that recently an article came out around the power players in AI, and there were no women in that article. So no women mentioned as power players in AI. Of course, if AI or the code behind it is created by a group of white old men, it's going to be biased to that, versus if it's a diverse group, like anything that we work on. If we don't have diverse perspectives, the outcome's not a diverse outcome. What are your thoughts on this? Is it just that, because tech's notorious for being very male dominated. What are the answers to that? How do we, I guess, what do you want to talk about related to that, Theresa? Because there's a million questions, right? How do we get women into AI? How do we make sure it's not biased? Like, what are your thoughts around that whole big topic?
Yeah, I think it's women and other underrepresented groups. I think for me, what really kicked off the obvious nature of it for me was probably maybe 5 or 6 months ago when Elon Musk launched his XAI, and he proudly announced his entire board, and there were no women on the board. that recently happened with the kerfuffle, if you will, that happened with OpenAI, and now they've got a new board of 3, and that's growing, all males. When I look to New York Times had an article out last week about the change makers in AI, all males. And so for me, it's really important for representation for the very reasons you mentioned. The more we have diverse voices in the creation of the models, the less biased and the less one-sided responses will happen to be, or will end up being. But I think even more so, less about the responses from AI is the fact that there are amazing women that are doing really interesting work in technology. Some of the leading technologists are females. They just don't get the visibility that that males do, because I think in some ways women may need to form our own women's club, and in a lot of places are doing that to say, like, let me amplify this individual, let me amplify this person, because they're doing really amazing things. There is a Slack channel and a different group, Women in AI, as well as Women for AI, that are doing really challenging the expectations of what tech looks like. I do think it's also incredibly critical that we do play some role, all of us, in the insights that we gather out of ChatGPT or other generative AI tools, in the same way I was mentioning before, that in the questions we ask, we can challenge those bots and those tools to give us non-biased answers. We can challenge them when they do give us biased answers, or we notice something that seems biased, that we challenge the GPT on that in the same way you might in a conversation. But I think the reality is that technology is mirroring the society we live in, and until we can really shift the conversation around who are the leaders and who are making waves and positive waves in technology, unfortunately, that story is going to, that's going to stay the same.
Yeah. AJ, I see your question. I want to stay on this conversation here, and I promise I'll circle back to your question. So we were talking earlier, I was telling you, I used to get an e-newsletter from a company that highlights really innovative things, and I can't remember what that e-newsletter was, but they highlighted all sorts of random innovative things going on in the world. And one article I remember receiving, because it really struck me, was that a bank who has the female automated voice, the automated voice, female, and men would call, apparently thinking nobody's listening and it doesn't matter. And they were kind of abusing this woman for shits and giggles, I guess. I don't know. And even though it was an automated voice, that the bank decided to take a stand that they don't need to have people, they don't need to perpetuate or provide a platform to perpetuate abuse of women or harassment of women. And so they used AI to make her respond. So now she stands up for herself, and she'll even threaten to hang up if you don't, change your tone or your language and that sort of a thing. And we were trying to find the bank right before we came on the show. And it was, what did we say it was? The Commonwealth Bank of Australia. We didn't have enough time to actually look at the article, but the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, I encourage you to look it up. They're doing something with AI to detect abuse, because one way in domestic violence, one way to have control over someone is to have control over their finances. So the Commonwealth Bank of Australia is, addressing a obviously very big human rights social issue with their AI. So I think
that's amazing.
So it just gets me thinking about, yes, we all need to be thinking about how we can use AI to better our business, better our careers, better our profession. But then also, are there ways that your company could be, using AI like this Commonwealth Bank of Australia? And, of course, it's all about money if you're a CEO of a business, especially a bank. I'm certain that if I lived in Australia, I would probably bank there just for that reason,
right?
So
can I virtually bank there?
We probably could have an account there. It's not the Cayman Islands, right? But it'll do fine. So anyway, just kind of wanted to share that conversation that Theresa and I were having. That may, and kind of back to the question, how do we talk to leaders about AI? Maybe it's not about bringing AI into the organization for your benefit or the employee's benefit. Maybe that's the conversation. Is there something your organization can do with AI that addresses a social issue? So just kind of wanted to put that out there.
Well, I think the other thing that when I pre-generative AI, or at least pre my experience with it, the trend had started to really come up. And I saw somebody in the chat, I think it was AJ, asking a little bit about the recruiting process with AI. We had started going through the process of scanning job descriptions and things like that for inclusive language or the lack of inclusive language. Websites have started to really crack down on utilizing inclusive language. And so I think that's, even though it's a little bit different from, somebody sexually harassing a bot and getting called out for it, rightfully so. The idea that we can use these tools to sort of filter in or filter out things that unintended comments. I worked in a company where, we had employees that had never done a performance review process before. So in their first few years, a lot of time was spent going through and coaching and guiding and supporting those managers in writing reviews that were reflective of their experience and their employees, performance, but used language that was a little bit either easier to understand, more inclusive. Now AI can be an amazing tool to help, as a manager, if you need to say something that might be more difficult to talk about, or you just don't know how to phrase it. Those are great ways to do it.
Yeah. And since you mentioned AJ's question, I pulled it up. So AJ's concern is that what if a candidate is filtered out because of a missing word? I'm sure you have an answer. I have a thought also, but you go first, Theresa.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, no tool is perfect. I talk about that a lot. AI is not an imperfect thing. And so there might be candidates that get filtered out. I think that's why it's so important. You could even use generative AI to understand what words would be optimal for a search and for utilizing in your ATS to ensure that candidates that fit X profile or X experience level wouldn't be filtered out. But I'm curious what your thoughts are, Catherine.
My thought was similar in that, back in the day when I was internal HR and looking at resumes, and they were being faxed in.
Yeah, I'm there.
Them on my desk. Like, what's a fax? I was certainly missing candidates at that point too, because I was scanning, and you get 3 seconds to impress me or use a word or two that I'm interested in for that role. Yeah. And so I think in some, like you said, it's an imperfect thing, just like people. And I'm certain I missed good candidates, but I think sometimes you kind of just have to go, we can't save everybody or bring, it is what it is. So okay, we've got another comment from Rachel. Admittedly, I have a lot more research to do, but is there any concern for confidentiality when using ChatGPT for policies, et cetera, especially when you submit for tone of voice examples?
So I would say unless your organization is paying for an enterprise level experience with OpenAI, which owns ChatGPT, I wouldn't necessarily be concerned about policies. Often now the world is really moving towards open communication, open policies, open AI, not open AI,
crowdsourced everything.
Yeah, it is really focused on, let's stop creating silos of information on things that aren't really that, proprietary. If you do have proprietary information, I would be very cautious about incorporating. I would anonymize data. So if you're doing, say, like if I was using ChatGPT to analyze an employee engagement survey, I would anonymize the data in a way that ensured that personal information wouldn't be incorporated into that assessment. Now, there are amazing tools out there. There's a company called Inca that does this incredibly well. They have an entire tool that can take your employee engagement survey analysis from a multi-week, sitting in your house, watching television with your highlighter and glass of wine and spreadsheets, down to a 30-minute process or a 5-minute process to get your results in 30 minutes to really look and give you some deep insights. So there are just better tools out there to pull information, but I would be, unless you're working on a contract with a tool that has actually that you've checked their confidentiality and where the information is used and how the information, if it's used for training purposes for future models, those are some of the questions you want to ask before you feel fully confident putting deep proprietary information in. But I think when it comes to queries, you can anonymize those. When it comes to, what I do often, and I'm giving away a little secret here, but I love supporting growing HR leaders. I really have done that my entire career. And I find that a lot of times now they're seeking questions on Facebook groups or things like that. And a lot of times I'll just go take their question, put it into ChatGPT and give them the answer, because it'll take 3 seconds for a rock solid answer when, to me, you're sitting there waiting for something. But those, again, if it's something you would post, you're not putting personalized information in there. So I think you have to be cautious in the same way that you would be cautious about any other tool. You have
online.
Yeah, exactly. You have, we have HRIS privacy for a reason. You wouldn't necessarily just give access to that without knowing who is going to have access and how that access is going to be used. So use the same level of caution you would, but for things like, building a job description, if you're still, in a month, if you're still miring away at trying to start with a blank page, there's no reason to do that.
Yeah. There's so many resources. I just want to call it, we are at time, but I have time to stay on and keep talking. If you have time to stay on and keep talking. All right. So putting that out there, we're going to keep going because there's so many questions. And Theresa, I hope you're applying to speak at the Society for Human Resources Management. I think you will have a full house. So did you apply? And if you didn't, we need to make you apply.
I didn't, but I certainly could.
We'll discuss. We'll go in the green room after. I've got several hours, actually. I was just going to do some finance stuff. I would much rather talk to you. Okay, so I have a personal question, not a personal question, but a question about survey analysis. So INCA, I-N-C-A, is
INQQA.
Oh, wait. Okay, I wrote it down wrong. What is it?
Yeah, here, I'll put it in the chat. INQQA.
INQQA. Inca. Okay. So we do a lot of surveys here with open-ended questions within each session or within each construct. So we end up with a ton of qualitative data. Is there an AI place to upload all of those comments and have, what we do is we move it into themes. And I have been struggling for years to not have a person do it because it takes hours and hours and hours. Please tell me there's an AI company out there that does that.
It's called Inca.
Oh, Inca does it too. So it's quantitative and qualitative analysis.
Oh yeah. Its primary focus is on qualitative.
Okay, got it. Perfect. Okay.
And that's why I've joked about that a lot, because I have also, and maybe it's just me, but I have also sat with my, legal size spreadsheets where I try to get every column on the spreadsheet printed out so I can go through and try to create the themes and then lump things, because I think one of the biggest challenges as an industry professional, at least from my perspective, and this might be, I maybe have more of a creative brain, is about 10 years ago, and I'm sure, I'd love to hear your experience about this. It's like all of a sudden HR leaders were not only supposed to do the full circle of what we already had to do, but now we were supposed to be data analysts and deeply understand how to navigate VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and data. And that was not my forte. And even the HR, I implemented several employee engagement systems, HRIS systems throughout my career. And even though they would all say, you know, we've got this great dashboard at the end, I always found that it was not necessarily what I needed it to be.
Right.
And because I was looking for more that qualitative insight, like what are you really thinking? And so when I found Inca, who I would love to, if anybody has questions, if you want to talk to them, I can make a great connection. Bruno is my bestie over there. But seeing what I used some of my old data, admittedly, and it literally took about 4 seconds to translate that thousands and thousands of pieces of data into clear themes. And it was explainable AI. So you may have heard that term before. What is explainable AI? Explainable AI.
So do explain.
Yeah. So explainable AI. So what generative AI is doing is it's basically following the most logical path possible based on millions and millions of points of data.
Okay.
And what explainable AI can do is it can take you back to what the genesis of that result was. So, for example, instead of uploading your information and seeing 10 themes, but not really being able to validate if those were the actual themes in the data, what Inca does is it takes you and drives you right back into where that data came from, but it allows you to see it at a much more macro level and micro level, which is exciting. So you can actually not only have that theme, but then it actually takes that and comes up with assessments and recommendations of what's happening within your organization based on that data.
If you could tell Bruno, because I used to Google, and now I think I'm going to go ask ChatGPT and see if it provides Inca as a resource. But they need, because this has been a challenge for the 15 years I've been in business. We really pride ourselves in taking that qualitative data and making it really useful versus here's 30 pages of comments in random order. So that we could say, you know, here's the theme that people trust leadership, and here's the comments that go along with that theme, and here's the theme that people say this one department's toxic, and here's the comments that go with that. And so I'm totally checking out Inca after this.
Yeah,
so
I think that's where, and I was introduced to Inca and Bruno many months ago, and I've worked with them for a while. And I'm not a part of their team or anything, but it's a service that I felt the same way. The minute I saw it, I felt like my dad. Okay, so growing up, my dad, we grew up in the Midwest. My dad was always like, you think this snow is bad? I had to walk both ways uphill with no boots on. I feel like that now with the future AI leaders, HR leaders, that are going to have these tools that make the core and the exciting part of what they can do, which is impact human experience and create amazing culture. It's going to allow them to do it with such expedience and authority and confidence. It's so exciting. And I sit there and I think, damn it, I had to do this. How many bottles of Pinot Noir have I gone through trying to get through this data? Not that I would give up the Pinot Noir, but
I was thinking about, Ali, I'm going to put your question back on hide for a minute. We'll ask it, but I had a thought earlier. I was in Starbucks line on my way into the office, and I was like responding to a work text, and I was sitting in line, so I wasn't driving and texting. And then I started thinking about this conversation with you, and I wonder, is there a concern that AI could cause even more burnout? Because if I already have all this information coming at me via email, blah, 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 and now I can cut my job description writing time down to a half hour from the 12 days it would take me before, I don't know. That's just something that was kind of running through my mind this morning. Like, now we're going to be expected to do even more if we're using AI. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think about it this way. Who is making the decision on where you're spending your time as an HR professional, manager, or leader?
My 4-year-old, but as an HR,
exactly. When you're at work, I hear what you're saying, and I think where it can become, any system can become challenging, is like analysis paralysis. And
Right.
and I think at the beginning, the excitement can lead you down a rabbit hole of just like prompting and prompting and prompting. Like I had so many conversations with my AI version of Brene Brown at the beginning because I love her voice, and that's how I basically ask 90% of my questions, like either in my voice or in the voice of Brene Brown. How would she say this, or how would Adam Grant say this? And you can get in a rabbit hole, but I think that's where like self-awareness and prioritization and those types of things are going to come into play. Another amazing tool, I know for me, where I ended up getting, I guess, where a lot of the time of my very small team in my last role. So in my last position, I was the head of HR, but I had basically one generalist and then an admin. And we would get so caught up in the time it took to answer really basic questions for a small company. There's an amazing tool that actually just launched today called Harriet. And you can put Harriet in your Slack channel and she will answer a lot of those baseline questions. Then the question you have to ask yourself is, if I'm now saving 12 hours, what could I do with that time? And I don't think it's realistic to necessarily say, okay, I've got 12 hours, but start with a half an hour, start with an hour. If I had one extra hour during my week to focus on employee retention, to focus on building a case to increase our comp bands, building a case to add headcount to certain roles or certain elements of the organization, or implement training tools. Like there are so many things you could be doing. It doesn't necessarily mean, you're going to save 12 hours and now everybody's working a 3-day work week.
Right.
But the reality is maybe you're spending more time doing the things that will move the needle for your business, validate the strategic role that HR has to play, get you a board seat, and you really play a meaningful role in the direction of the business, which elevates all of us, right?
Theresa, are you in San Diego?
No, I'm actually in Norwalk, Connecticut.
I was going to say, I want to give you a hug. That's a great answer. Okay, last question, and then we do have to, I do have to work on my company finances today, so I can't sit here and talk forever. So Allie, your question was, what is the next step HR professionals and future HR professionals need to take to adapt their knowledge using AI? Great kind of ending, bring it home question. Oh no, we lost Theresa. Hopefully she'll come back quickly. Allie, I don't know the answer to your question. If anybody else has answers, let's give it a moment, see if Theresa comes back. If any others have questions, by all means. Oh, here she comes.
Oh, sorry.
She's back.
Sure. I had 2 recommendations. All right. The first one is that I would challenge everybody listening to take 30 minutes, just put 30 minutes somewhere each week for the next 4 weeks. You can find 30 minutes. It's the holiday. It's like, we're all kind of holiday brain. 30 minutes and just explore generative AI. Take, ChatGPT 1 week, try Claude, try Bard, and try Bing.
So Claude, CLAUDE, Bard is BARD.
Yep.
Okay.
And Bing.
As in the search engine Bing?
Yep.
Okay.
It's through Microsoft Edge, so you do have to download Microsoft Edge, but Bing is a very, very strong generative AI tool.
Okay.
And I say that so that you can just start to expand your knowledge base and practice using some of those prompts that I shared. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, so the second way is to connect with me. If you sign up I'm actually looking for it right now. I want to share in the chat connection information. And if you connect with me here, let me find it. Beep bop boop bop beep bop boop. I have a monthly. Hold on a second. Copy. I have a monthly what I call PeoplePowerAI clinics, and they are 20-minute, what I like to call like 20 to 30-minute snack conversations where we talk about a specific tool. I may have guests from different companies like Inca or Harriet or Jasper, or these other organizations come in and do very short, non-sales pitch oriented education moments on AI. My mission in that regard is to help educate as many people, HR leaders as possible on how AI can be a positive addition to their toolbox. And the last thing I'll say is the last result I read said that 40% of people that get responses out of generative AI don't actually read it. That's my number one recommendation. No matter what you get out of a generative AI tool, read it, make sure it is understandable by you, and that you don't just launch it out into the world.
Oh man, yeah, you gotta read it. Diane made a comment, and I am getting that same thing, that we can't see your comments. We could see the Inca comment, but I don't know why we can't see everything else you post. Did you post it inside StreamYard or LinkedIn?
How's that one? Said it failed to post to Catherine Mattis.
So you know what we'll do, Diane, is Theresa will come back to this page, because this LinkedIn show will be on LinkedIn forever, and it's also on YouTube and in other places. But Theresa will come circle back to this page, and she'll put her resources in there for you, and that way they'll be there. So maybe check back later today if Theresa has time, and she'll do that. And I think I speak for everyone when I say this was probably one of the best LinkedIn Lives I've done. I learned so much. This was awesome. Don't hang up, Theresa. I want to chat with you once we're not live anymore. And please, everyone, share the knowledge, share this page, share Theresa's PeoplePowerAI LinkedIn group so you can learn more there. We all have so much to learn about how to use this, and Theresa is clearly an expert. Holy moly. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everybody. And Catherine, this was such a great chat. I'm so glad we did this.
Me too. We might have to do it again. We'll have to do a part 2 next year. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your morning, noon, or night, and we'll see you next time.